Welcome to Fred's 10-Minute Marketing Courses.
Today, we are discussing Redefining Middle Managers in the AI Age, written by Fred James.
Which is quite a heavy topic, honestly.
Oh, it really is. And I actually have a question for you, the person listening right now. Picture your current workflow. You are a frontline marketer, right?
Right, you're out there in the trenches.
Exactly.
Yes.
You have got a burning, time-sensitive issue on your desk. Maybe you are holding a stack of raw customer complaints about a brand new 3C consumer electronics launch.
Computers, communication devices, all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly those. Or perhaps you're trying to figure out how to handle a complex B2C logistics failure where shipments are missing. So you take this massive headache to your manager.
Desperate for some strategic guidance, naturally.
And what happens? They just blindly forward high-level executive directives down to you. Then they scoop up the raw data you compiled and push it straight up the ladder to the boss. They offer zero actual help.
They function basically like a mindless network router.
Yes. Have you ever dealt with a manager like that? You ask them a question and they just bounce the raw signal back at you.
Well, as someone who has spent a considerable amount of time in senior management, I can tell you that the router style of management is not just a common frustration. I mean, for decades, it was actually the standard operating procedure.
Wait, seriously, that was on purpose?
Oh, absolutely. But the fascinating reality of the era we are navigating right now is that the digital age is actively destroying this exact type of manager. Specifically, the massive permanent shift to hybrid and remote work.
So technology is basically serving as a massive firmware update, completely wiping out the legacy system of the corporate middleman.
That is exactly what is happening, yeah.
Which brings us to our mission in this discussion. We want to explore how middle managers can actually survive this digital wave. Because, if your only job is passing information back and forth between the top floor and the front line, you are going to be replaced by a software automation script.
You really are. We need to dissect how managers can prove their real, irreplaceable value against the rising tide of artificial intelligence.
Right. But to understand how technology is breaking the old system, we have to look back at how that traditional model operated. And Fred James shares a highly illustrated story about a manager he calls Mr. Wang.
Ah, the classic Mr. Wang. He is the true embodiment of 20th century corporate survival.
He really is the ultimate router manager. The author describes how the frontline staff would approach Mr. Wang with serious, pressing issues. So, for example, a junior employee might ask how to process a massive, multi-tiered B2B enterprise order.
High-stakes stuff.
Yeah, very high stakes. Another might ask if a specific aggressive dealer pricing strategy was acceptable for the upcoming quarter, or someone might just ask for help dealing with a chronically broken office printer.
And how does our guy Mr. Wang handle these?
In every single scenario, Mr. Wang would perform this masterful verbal evasion. He would smile calmly, entirely dodge the substance of the question and say, well, what do you think?
It really is a phenomenal defense mechanism.
Or he would just instruct them to figure it out themselves because he, as a manager, could not be expected to micromanage every detail. And it goes beyond a defense mechanism, honestly. He was incredibly proud of this approach.
He explicitly viewed himself as a simple Wi-Fi router.
Exactly. He stated his job only consisted of two primary functions. First, take the high-level financial and strategic goals from the executives and translate them into daily tasks for the team.
And the second?
Second, take the raw performance metrics from the team and translate them into polished financial reports for the executives. Anything outside of that vertical data transfer, he completely washed his hands of it.
Which, from your perspective on the front lines, must sound infuriating.
Oh, reading that triggers a genuine spike of frustration for me. It is like helicopter parenting in reverse. How does completely abandoning your team add any value at all?
You feel like it is a scam.
It honestly sounds like a lazy, deceptive way of tricking upper management into thinking you are leading, while actively ignoring the people doing the actual work.
Well, I am going to stop you right there and push back on that a bit. From the front line, sure, it absolutely looks like abandonment. You feel left out in the cold. But if I put on my senior management hat, there is a brutal genius to what Mr. Wang was doing.
Brutal genius. Okay, I am listening.
There are two hidden realities behind this router method that Fred James outlines, and they're vital to understand. So the first is empowerment through failure.
See, I struggle to see how leaving a junior marketer to panic over a B2B dealer pricing strategy empowers them. It just sounds like a fast track to losing a major client.
It does sound harsh, I grant you that. But consider the alternative. If a manager is constantly hovering over your desk, spoon-feeding you every solution, fixing every jammed printer, and jumping in to smooth over every rough edge in a client negotiation, what happens?
I guess you do not learn.
Exactly. You never actually learn the mechanics of your job. You never build the muscle of independent problem solving. By forcing employees to struggle, to sweat a little bit, to make their own mistakes and untangle their own messes, a manager forces them to grow.
So you are arguing for a deliberate trial by fire.
I am arguing for the necessity of friction in professional development. If you are never allowed to fail, you will never be capable of leading your own team one day. And the second reality is purely financial.
Meaning it is cheaper to manage this way.
It is a matter of strict cost efficiency. A company pays middle managers a premium salary for strategic foresight, right? For looking 6 months ahead and for protecting the broader vision of the department.
Right, that makes sense.
So if a senior manager earning that premium salary is spending 2 hours of their Tuesday crawling under a desk to fix a jammed printer, that is a problem. Or if they are manually adjusting line items on a B2C shipping invoice because a junior employee was too timid to do it.
That is a massive hemorrhage of company resources.
Precisely. You do not pay a premium salary for administrative triage.
Okay, when you frame it as resource allocation, the logic holds up. In an old-school office environment, where information was physically hoarded in filing cabinets and executives were locked in corner offices, being that router might have been sufficient.
You forced the junior staff to figure out the granular details, and you guarded the big picture.
Right, because the bottleneck was physical.
Exactly. It functioned beautifully when information was scarce, and physical proximity was required to access it. But that brings us to the core causality of this entire transition.
The physical bottleneck vanished.
It completely vanished. Modern technology has rendered the router philosophy dangerously obsolete.
The digital tools completely bypass the router. The author cites some compelling insights from the Harvard Business Review regarding this shift. The fundamental issue for the Mr. Wangs of the world is that digital platforms have made enterprise information entirely transparent.
There are no more filing cabinets to guard.
Right. The boss no longer needs Mr. Wang to compile the team's performance into a weekly sanitized PowerPoint report.
Not at all. The modern executive is sitting in an airport lounge pulling up real-time CRM data.
They're customer relationship management dashboards.
Exactly. And they are looking at exactly how much it costs to acquire a customer at that very second. They are checking the ERP systems, the enterprise resource planning software, to monitor warehouse inventory and supply chain delays instantly on their phone.
The data flows upward automatically. And, crucially, it flows downward automatically too. When high-level executives want to announce a new company objective, they do not whisper it to the middle managers to trickle down to the staff over a week.
You just launch a company-wide live stream.
Yeah, they broadcast directly to the front line. The middleman is entirely bypassed. The router is unplugged.
Which triggers absolute panic among old-school managers, because if their traditional management style relied on being the exclusive gatekeeper of information, and that gate has been dismantled, they suddenly feel like they have no leverage.
And no purpose.
Right, and the shift to remote work just completely shattered whatever was left of that old system.
Let's dig into why that happens, because the psychology of it is fascinating. Old-school managers relied heavily on management by walking around. Physical presence was their proxy for productivity.
If they saw you sitting at a desk typing, they assumed you were working.
Exactly. When remote work removed that physical proximity, their entire framework for evaluating performance went blind.
And when managers go blind, they compensate with extreme control.
It is a total disaster. I have seen this nightmare scenario play out in real life for frontline marketers. You have managers who are so terrified of losing control in a remote environment that they resort to digital surveillance.
Oh, the camera tracking.
Yes, we're talking about managers forcing employees to keep their video cameras on all day long just so they can monitor them sitting in their living rooms. Or they schedule 8 different video meetings a day simply to simulate the feeling of having a physical team around them.
Which accomplishes nothing.
It completely destroys team morale, it wrecks mental health, and it tanks actual productivity because everyone is exhausted from performing for the camera.
It is management driven by pure anxiety. And often, that anxiety is rooted in their own technological incompetence.
Oh, tell me about it.
There is a deeply cautionary tale in the source material that highlights this perfectly. A senior manager had a crucial online meeting scheduled to secure a major foreign B2B client.
High stakes again.
Very. However, the tech-savvy junior employee who usually handled all the software logistics was on leave. This senior manager could not even figure out how to launch the video conference.
Oh, no.
They could not figure out how to share their screen or unmute their microphone.
Just leaving the boss and the international client staring at a blank screen, listening to silence? That is humiliating.
It is humiliating, but more importantly, it is revealing. The core issue was not just that this manager lacked basic software skills. The actual crisis was their completely outdated mindset.
Because they thought tech was beneath them.
Exactly. They still operated under the assumption that technical details were a lower-level task, that a junior staff member would always be there to handle the machinery while they did the real managing.
But in the digital age, the machinery is the management. If you cannot navigate the digital space where the work actually happens, you cannot lead the work.
Spot on.
So, if technology is bypassing the router and the old school management styles are actively harming the team through digital micromanagement, it forces us to ask a really uncomfortable question. And I will play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
If digital tools seamlessly connect the absolute top of the company to the absolute bottom, why not just fire all the middle managers?
The CFO's dream scenario. The nuclear option.
Think about it. A lot of highly agile tech startups run this way. Isn't absolute organizational flattening the most cost-effective and efficient path? Why not let the executives use these incredible tech platforms to directly command the frontline workers?
Just cut out the bloat, save millions in middle management salaries, and operate with maximum speed.
Exactly. Why doesn't that work?
It sounds incredibly tempting on paper, especially to an executive board looking to trim the budget, but it is a massive, highly destructive trap. I have seen companies try absolute flattening, and the results are chaotic.
Why chaotic?
The first obvious flaw is that top executives, by the very nature of their roles, simply do not have the time to micromanage frontline execution. They are analyzing macro trends, planning market expansions, and building 5-year forecasts.
They cannot be checking ad copy.
Exactly. But beyond that, we have to look at it from the perspective of the person actually doing the work.
Okay, place me in that scenario. I am a frontline marketer connected directly to the executive board. What happens?
I will give you an IT metaphor. Connecting the front line directly to the executive board is like plugging a standard motherboard straight into a municipal power grid without a transformer.
Oh, a massive unmitigated power surge.
Exactly. Executive brainstorming is inherently chaotic, and it is meant to be. They throw out wild ideas, they debate aggressive budget cuts, they pivot strategies daily before settling on a final path.
So they're throwing a lot of things at the wall.
Right. If a junior marketer suddenly receives every single piece of that unfiltered high-level brainstorming, it is disastrous. Imagine getting every late-night idea the CEO has about restructuring the consumer products division or every debated budget cut that has not been finalized.
That would cause massive cognitive overload.
The motherboard fries.
I would be entirely paralyzed. If I see an email thread where the executives are debating killing my product line, I am not going to focus on marketing it today. I am going to panic. I would not know what to prioritize.
Exactly. When you remove the middle manager entirely, you do not get streamlined efficiency. You get a paralyzed front line that makes incredibly costly mistakes because they cannot distinguish between a finalized, actionable strategic directive and a passing thought the CEO had during a morning commute.
So if dumping raw data paralyzes the team, the manager's job is no longer moving data. It is filtering it. But does this mean managers revert to hiding information?
What do you mean?
Do they go back to being a firewall that blocks the front line from seeing what is happening at the top?
That is the critical distinction we have to make. It is absolutely no longer about hiding information. As we established, you cannot hide it anyway.
Right. The ERP dashboard and the company live streams are right there for everyone to see.
Exactly. The new role of the firewall is not to block the voltage. It is to step that voltage down into usable energy. It is about taking raw information and creating meaning.
Creating meaning. This brings us to the core concept from Fred James that redefines the entire profession.
It really is the crux of this deep dive.
If the manager is no longer a router and they are not a traditional blocking firewall, they must evolve into a translator of context. The author terms this worker intelligence.
Worker intelligence. It is a brilliant, highly intentional play on words.
It's this dead serious contrast between artificial intelligence and worker intelligence, which represents human intelligence and empathy.
A very stark contrast.
Think about your own daily communications. Are you just forwarding automated emails to your team, or are you attaching the why? AI is incredibly ruthlessly efficient. An AI system can instantly auto-generate a complex financial report and email it to all 500 employees in the company simultaneously.
But AI is cold.
Exactly. Artificial intelligence can deliver the raw data, but worker intelligence is what tells the team why that data actually matters to their daily lives and career trajectories.
Context is the one territory that algorithms still fundamentally fail to grasp.
Let me walk you through a specific scenario that illustrates this perfectly. Let's say a company's AI financial system coldly sends out an automated announcement. There's going to be a 30% marketing budget cut for the entire 2C consumer electronics division next quarter.
A 30% cut announced with zero context. The immediate reaction on the floor is going to be visceral.
Total unmitigated panic. Everyone on the front line is going to assume the company's failing. They're going to assume layoffs are coming by Friday.
Productivity just stops.
Resumes are going to be updated immediately, LinkedIn profiles will be activated, and productivity will absolutely tank because everyone is operating out of fear.
That is the power surge effect in action. Unfiltered data causing systemic chaos.
Now insert a middle manager who is utilizing worker intelligence. They see that same automated data, but they step in front of the team and provide the crucial context.
They step down the voltage.
Yes. They explain, listen, I know this 30% cut to the 2C division looks terrifying on paper, but the context you are missing is that the executive board is shifting those funds because our specific team has been selected to lead a massive, high-priority, new Silicon Valley tech project.
That completely flips the narrative.
We are not losing resources.
Yeah.
Our strategic focus is just migrating to a much bigger, more lucrative opportunity.
And in an instant, the entire emotional temperature of the room changes.
The raw data was terrifying, but the context provided by worker intelligence transforms that panic into immense opportunity. People are not updating their resumes. They are energized and getting ready for the new Silicon Valley project.
It is incredible what context can do.
Let's look at another common scenario. Imagine a major product delay. The engineering team pushes back a launch by 6 weeks. An automated AI alert hits the marketing team saying, launch delayed.
Again, immediate panic.
The marketing team thinks their campaign is ruined, but a manager with worker intelligence steps in and says they delayed it to add the specific software feature our B2B clients aggressively requested last quarter.
So it is actually a win.
Right. We can use this delay to tease the feature and make it a massive selling point.
That ability to reframe reality is the true quantifiable value of the modern middle manager. And this concept of worker intelligence expands far beyond just explaining budgets or product delays.
How so?
It ties directly into how a manager handles the human beings on their team. Fred Jane introduces a highly effective framework for this called serve up, nurture down.
Serve up, nurture down. It completely redefines the traditional corporate hierarchy.
It really does. A true manager serves the strategic vision of the boss, meaning they ensure the executive goals are achieved efficiently. But when they look down the organizational chart at their staff, they act as a coach.
Not a nanny who fixes jammed printers.
Exactly. And certainly not a servant who does the work for them, but a strategic coach. And in our modern era of remote work, knowing how to coach someone you cannot physically see is where worker intelligence becomes a survival skill.
Because you cannot rely on physical proximity to tell you if someone is struggling. You cannot see an employee slumping at their desk or crying in the break room.
Precisely. So how do you coach a remote employee who is failing? A manager with strong worker intelligence learns to read what we can call human metadata.
Human metadata. I like that.
They notice the slight deviations from the baseline. They notice when a normally enthusiastic employee starts sending shorter, highly clipped, purely transactional emails.
Oh, I have definitely noticed that with colleagues.
Right, it is a clear sign. They notice the erratic pacing of a project update in the workflow software. Maybe tasks that used to take an hour are suddenly taking 2 days.
They are looking for behavioral shifts.
They detect the early warning signs of burnout when an employee consistently drops off camera during meetings without explanation. They are reading the digital footprint of human exhaustion.
And once they read that human metadata, they step in and offer customized psychological support. Maybe an employee needs a hard deadline shifted because they're overwhelmed, or maybe they just need a quick, empathetic phone call to vent about a frustrating B2C logistics issue.
Just making them feel heard.
That ability to nurture the human element, to detect quiet struggles and maintain morale across a dispersed digital network is something no software update can automate.
It is the evolution from processing hardware data like a router to actually nurturing human potential like a true leader. Which brings us to a final, slightly chilling thought for you to ponder as we wrap up this discussion.
Oh, a chilling thought. Go on.
We have been talking about how AI is currently cold and lacks context. But artificial intelligence is evolving incredibly fast, faster than most corporate structures are prepared to handle.
This is very true. So what happens in the very near future? What happens when AI gets so remarkably advanced that it can automatically analyze a team's emotional state through large language models?
The AI could read the metadata.
Exactly. What happens when it can detect burnout based on an employee's keystroke pacing and instantly draft a perfectly empathetic, emotionally nuanced check-in email?
Wow, that is a wild scenario.
If a human manager's only job at that point is to sit at their laptop and simply click send on an AI-generated empathy email, haven't they just reverted right back to being a mindless router?
It is a brilliant, terrifying scenario to consider. It suggests that the firmware update hasn't stopped installing.
Not at all.
But I believe there is a defense against that too. And it is something to deeply chew on before your next one-on-one meeting with your team. Even if an AI language model writes the absolute perfect, psychologically calibrated email, it cannot replicate human stakes.
Human stakes?
Yes. Perhaps the unpredictable vulnerability of a real person and the genuine, messy, face-to-face emotional connection of a human being genuinely looking out for another human being is the one true firewall that AI can never breach.
Thank you for listening. If you have any thoughts on today's episode or marketing topics, feel free to leave a comment below the video. This is Fred's 10-minute marketing courses. See you next time.